What if the world's most controversial royal just got exposed on live TV by a cartoon? In a jaw-dropping new episode, South Park just dropped a bombshell, depicting Meghan Markle on a talk show where her pregnancy belly falls off mid-interview, reigniting one of the most disturbing rumors ever tied to her name. Within hours, Meghan was reportedly spotted fleeing to Dubai under intense secrecy. Was this a satirical joke taken too far, or a brutal commentary on a collapsing public image? Tonight, we unravel the shocking symbolism behind the animation, why Meghan's alleged escape is sparking even more suspicion, and how this 22-minute cartoon could cause irreversible damage to her brand. What really happened behind the scenes? Let's get into it. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It was just another ordinary evening in the world of entertainment, until South Park lit a cultural fuse that exploded across the internet like wildfire. Within minutes of the episode airing, hashtags began trending, memes flooded every platform, and social media went into a frenzy. But nothing prepared the public for the sheer brutality of what unfolded on screen. Meghan Markle, depicted as a desperate fame-hungry royal reject, was shown in one of the most savage parodies South Park has ever produced. And in one specific scene, so outrageous and symbolic that it instantly became the topic of global discussion, her cartoon character's prosthetic baby bump falls off live on air. Yes, you read that right. In front of a fake studio audience inside the animated world of South Park, Meghan Markle's character, a carbon copy of her real-life media persona, laughs, talks, and flaunts her carefully curated image. Until she moves to adjust her seat and suddenly, horrifyingly, her pregnancy bump slips off and hits the floor with a dull thud. The moment is followed by gasps, silence, then a mocking eruption of laughter. The implication? That her pregnancy, one of the most talked about topics during her time in the royal family, was faked. That the entire narrative surrounding the birth of her first child might have been an illusion, a carefully manufactured PR moment. Whether satire or slander, the impact was immediate. Twitter threads dissected every frame. Reddit boards burst into speculation and debate. Influencers reacted in real time, some laughing hysterically, others expressing horror that South Park would dare go that far. But perhaps most damning of all was the reaction behind the scenes. Reports from anonymous insiders and leaked airport footage began to circulate less than 24 hours later. According to multiple sources, Meghan Markle abruptly changed travel plans, canceled upcoming appearances, and boarded a private jet bound for Dubai, a region known for its strict privacy laws, elite-level luxury, and more importantly, its non-extradition policies. There was no press release, no public statement, no Instagram story to clarify or spin the situation. Just a quiet departure. Cameras caught her arriving at a private hangar in California, dressed in all black, face partially covered, escorted by two men with earpieces and diplomatic-styled security vehicles. The Duchess of Sussex, it seemed, was on the run. Not from danger in the physical sense, but from something arguably far more destructive, public ridicule on a global scale, and the fear that her carefully crafted public image was unraveling before the world's eyes. But how did we get here? How did Meghan Markle, once hailed as the modern royal who would breathe new life into the monarchy, end up being portrayed in such an unflattering, even humiliating light? And more importantly, why now? This video will take you step by step through the stunning chain of events that led to this cultural firestorm. From Meghan's controversial rise to royal life, to the persistent rumors about the nature of her pregnancies, and the way her media presence has shifted over the years, from polished to performative, from relatable to relentless. We'll analyze the South Park episode in detail, why it struck such a nerve, what message the creators were trying to send, and how it aligns with the wider public discourse surrounding the Sussexes. We'll explore the alleged decision to fly to Dubai, what that says about Meghan's state of mind, what strategic advantages that move might offer, and what it could mean for her future in the public eye. You'll hear from cultural analysts, media experts, and royal commentators who have watched the Meghan Markle story unfold from every possible angle. You'll hear how Meghan's critics have seized on this moment as vindication, while her defenders scramble to shift the narrative, accusing the cartoon of crossing ethical lines into misogyny and mockery. You'll also hear how Harry has responded, or more notably, failed to respond, and what this silence from the Duke of Sussex could suggest about fractures inside the once unbreakable royal rebellion. This isn't just a tabloid moment. This is a cultural turning point, one where fiction and reality collide, where satire reveals more truth than a polished interview ever could. The belly-dropping scene wasn't just comedic shock value. It was a symbol, a metaphorical gut punch to Meghan's brand, calling into question not only her authenticity, but the very narrative that propelled her to global fame. The timing couldn't have been worse or more precise. Meghan had recently been rumored to be preparing a media comeback. Talks of new podcast ventures, potential film deals, and another possible documentary were circulating in media circles. Insiders hinted that she was aiming to rebrand yet again, this time as a lifestyle mogul, distancing herself from royal drama in favor of fashion, wellness, and motherhood. But just as she was laying the groundwork for her next move, South Park fired a missile straight into the center of her new strategy, detonating years of brand building in under 22 minutes of animated chaos. For those unfamiliar with South Park's reach, understand this. The show isn't just a comedy. It's a barometer of public perception. When South Park targets someone, it's because the collective culture has shifted enough for that satire to resonate with its audience. From Tom Cruise's infamous Scientology episode to Kanye West's fish stick fiasco, South Park has a track record of reducing powerful celebrity personas into punchlines, and those punchlines often stick. The show does not parody irrelevance. It parodies figures who are symbolic of something greater: ego, hypocrisy, contradiction. And in this episode, Meghan Markle wasn't just mocked. She was dismantled. So why Dubai? That's the question echoing across forums and inside media war rooms. Dubai isn't just a place where wealthy people vacation. It's become a known haven for celebrities and royals who need a place to retreat, reset, and recalculate. With intense media privacy laws, tight security, and exclusive access to lawyers, image consultants, and PR fixers, Dubai offers a kind of sanctuary not available in Los Angeles or London. Multiple high-profile figures, including disgraced billionaires, embattled royals, and fugitive tycoons, have used Dubai as a temporary hideout when scandals erupt. Some stay briefly. Others never return. Was Meghan simply escaping the humiliation? Or was this part of a larger plan to move away from Western media altogether? Was this a retreat, or the first move in a calculated PR counterattack? And where does that leave Prince Harry, still in Montecito, watching the chaos unfold from a distance? Or involved behind the scenes, preparing to launch a legal response, a new memoir, or a damage control tour? The silence from their camp is deafening. But silence, as we know, often speaks louder than words. And as the world waits to see what Meghan does next, whether she reappears with a statement, issues a lawsuit, or vanishes for good, one truth remains unavoidable. South Park didn't just mock Meghan Markle. They exposed something deeper. They pulled back the curtain on a cultural figure who has mastered the art of image but failed to maintain control over the public's perception of that image. You might think this is just a cartoon, a cruel joke, a throwaway episode. But for Meghan Markle, it might be the most devastating headline she never saw coming. Now, before we go deeper, take a moment to consider everything this moment represents. The collision of royalty and entertainment, the blurred lines between personal truth and public narrative, the vulnerability of even the most carefully controlled brands. Because whether you're Team Meghan or Team Skeptic, one thing is undeniable: this story is far from over. And the next chapter begins right now. It all started with the usual satirical intro. South Park is known for over-the-top music, exaggerated character voices, and a setup dripping in parody. But this episode was different. It wasn't just comedic satire, it was direct, targeted, and scathing. The storyline centered around the fictional Prince and Princess of Canada, unmistakably meant to be stand-ins for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. From the moment their animated figures walked onto the screen, the tone was clear. This wasn't going to be subtle, and it certainly wasn't going to be kind. The characters, thinly veiled representations of Harry and Meghan, immediately launched into what the show labeled their worldwide privacy tour, a biting contradiction in itself. Signs reading, "We want privacy," were carried while the characters marched in front of large crowds, appeared on talk shows, and issued endless press statements about being left alone. Viewers instantly caught the irony. The more the cartoon royals demanded to be left alone, the more public their appearances became. And the creators of South Park were not pulling any punches. But none of that compared to what came next. About 10 minutes into the episode, the animated Meghan character appears on a fictional daytime talk show, clearly modeled after popular formats like The View or The Ellen Show. She's introduced by the cartoon host as the most beautiful and inspiring woman in the world, and as she enters the stage, the audience erupts into applause. She waves graciously, sits down delicately, and begins discussing her beautiful journey into motherhood. The character gushes about how much she loves being a mother, how natural the experience was for her, and how misunderstood she's been by the world. But then it happens. Midway through her emotional monologue, the animated Meghan reaches down to shift in her seat, something completely normal. But as she moves, something bulges unnaturally beneath her dress. A second later, with a pop sound effect followed by a thud, a prosthetic silicone baby bump slides out from under her dress and plops directly onto the studio floor. The audience gasps. The host stares, wide-eyed. The camera zooms in comically on the detached bump. For a second, there's complete silence. Then the cartoon crowd bursts into laughter. The Meghan character looks horrified, clutching her stomach and then trying to scoop up the prosthetic while muttering excuses. One of the show's fictional producers yells from off-camera, "Cut to commercial." But it's too late. The damage is done. The symbolism couldn't be clearer. South Park had chosen to openly depict one of the most controversial and sensitive rumors surrounding Meghan Markle, the idea that she had used a surrogate and wore a fake baby bump throughout her public appearances. A theory long dismissed by mainstream media as ridiculous and harmful, yet one that has persisted in certain internet circles for years. In a single exaggerated gag, South Park did what no mainstream outlet dared to do. They took that conspiracy and parodied it on primetime television in front of millions. Within minutes of the episode airing, social media went wild. Screenshots of the prosthetic belly scene were clipped, shared, and meme-ified across Twitter, TikTok, and Reddit. TikTokers added their own commentary, reenacted the scene, and added music for dramatic flair. One user captioned the clip, "South Park didn't just throw shade, they dropped a bomb." Another wrote, "We're going to need Buckingham Palace to respond to this." Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Bellygate returned in full force. Hashtag Fake Bump trended once again, years after it first surfaced. Conspiracy theorists who had been dismissed or ridiculed suddenly found a wave of validation. Even those who never bought into the surrogate rumors were now talking about it. The effect of the cartoon wasn't to spread the theory, it was to reignite it, and in the process, shake the already unstable public image Meghan had been cultivating since her royal exit. And it didn't stop there. The scene's viral reach stretched beyond English-speaking audiences. Spanish subtitles, Arabic translations, and French reactions appeared in hours. International forums debated the ethical line of the parody. Was it fair game because Meghan is a public figure? Or had South Park crossed into dangerous territory? Attacking a woman's motherhood and femininity in ways that could be perceived as cruel? Despite the global reach and instant reaction, Meghan and Harry's media team remained silent. No statements were issued. No tweets, no rebuttals, no legal threats, at least not immediately. That silence only added to the intrigue. Royal experts began to weigh in, not just on the ethics of the scene, but on its cultural implications. British commentator Richard Fitzwilliams noted during a podcast appearance, "When South Park decides to come after you, it means you've crossed a certain threshold of public saturation." Meghan and Harry aren't just public figures, they've become archetypes. They represent something larger now, and this cartoon treatment proves it. What did the creators of South Park hope to achieve? According to insiders familiar with the show's production process, the writers have been watching Meghan's evolution from Hollywood actress to Duchess to global celebrity very closely. Her journey, they argue, is rich with contradictions, pleas for privacy followed by intimate documentaries, claims of being silenced followed by primetime tell-alls, and a relentless push for public sympathy juxtaposed with calculated brand building. Trey Parker and Matt Stone, South Park's creators, have built their legacy on calling out hypocrisy in pop culture. They've mocked religious institutions, political figures, tech giants, and celebrities. But what makes their targeting of Meghan Markle particularly brutal is the emotional subject matter. Parodying someone's spiritual beliefs or fashion choices is one thing, but mocking motherhood? Accusing her of faking something as intimate as pregnancy, even in cartoon form, lands differently. It's personal, it's invasive, and it stings. But in the world of satire, the more sacred the topic, the sharper the punch. That scene, those few seconds of the bump hitting the floor, delivered a blow far beyond a cartoon script. It became a cultural mirror, a moment of exaggerated fiction that forced the public to re-examine their relationship with celebrity motherhood, media manipulation, and the fine line between victimhood and performance. And for Meghan Markle, it wasn't just an image joke. It was a reputational gut punch. Even some of her supporters were caught off guard. Pro-Meghan bloggers expressed frustration and disbelief. One wrote, "I get that South Park is satire, but this was brutal. It felt like a line was crossed. Making fun of her attitude? Sure. But this? This felt like an attack." Still, the episode wasn't without defenders. Other viewers applauded the cartoon for saying what many had been thinking but were too afraid to articulate in mainstream spaces. For them, the show didn't invent the theory, it merely held a funhouse mirror up to the years of contradiction and carefully managed narratives that surround the Duchess of Sussex. This wasn't just an internet moment. It was a rupture. And the shockwaves were still reverberating. In the hours that followed, late-night comedians made jokes, morning talk shows cautiously mentioned the scene, and YouTube commentary channels dropped hot takes. The South Park episode entered the mainstream news cycle, no longer just a pop culture flashpoint, but a story with real consequences. News outlets debated whether the parody would affect Meghan and Harry's political advocacy, public speaking invitations, and brand partnerships. Would Dior distance themselves? Would Netflix get nervous about the couple's credibility? Would Meghan ever return to a public stage without that prosthetic bump image floating behind her in the collective memory? It was no longer about a cartoon. It was about a perception shift. A sudden, dramatic twist in the way Meghan Markle was being viewed, not as a sympathetic royal exile, but as a performative celebrity who might not be as authentic as she claims. South Park hadn't ended her career, but it had peeled back a layer of media polish. And once that layer is gone, it rarely returns. Now the world wasn't just laughing, they were watching. To understand the impact of South Park's explosive cartoon satire, one must dive deeper into the rumor that lay at the heart of the episode, the long-circulated surrogacy allegations that have haunted Meghan Markle since her first pregnancy. This chapter does not promote any claim, but it lays bare the controversial discourse that has trailed the Duchess of Sussex since her entry into royal life. These allegations didn't begin with South Park. They've existed in the murky corners of internet forums, speculative tabloids, and whispers across social media since 2019. At the time, Meghan was pregnant with her first child, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. On the surface, it was a royal love story expanding into family. But beneath that fairy tale, questions began to circulate. Why did her baby bump seem to shift in shape and size between appearances? Why were there no official hospital photos of her leaving with a newborn as was royal tradition? Why was there such secrecy around the details of the birth? These questions gave rise to what became known online as moon bump theory, a term used to describe an alleged silicone pregnancy prosthetic worn by actresses or public figures. For Meghan, the theory centered around one core idea, that she had used a surrogate to carry Archie but pretended to be pregnant herself for optics and public narrative. The idea was outrageous to many, dismissed outright by mainstream outlets, but it didn't disappear. On certain internet forums like Lipstick Alley and subreddits dedicated to royal gossip, the conversation deepened. Users posted videos of Meghan bending down, claiming the bump folded unnaturally. Others shared photos that showed inconsistencies in size from one day to the next. Screenshots from her appearances at Commonwealth Day services, charity engagements, and walkabouts were analyzed frame by frame, with conspiracy theorists asserting that no natural pregnancy could produce such changes in bump positioning and volume. Most notably, one piece of footage appeared to go viral, Meghan crouching down during a visit to a community center, and the bump seemed to flatten or move sideways under her dress. Whether the effect was a trick of the camera angle, a loose-fitting garment, or an actual anomaly remains disputed. But the clip gave fuel to the conspiracy fire, and from there, speculation surged. Compounding the rumors was the fact that Meghan and Harry declined to follow many of the traditional protocols surrounding royal births. There were no photos taken on the hospital steps as with Princess Diana or Kate Middleton. The location of the birth itself was initially unclear, with a brief media confusion over whether Archie was born at Portland Hospital in London or somewhere more private. The official birth certificate later confirmed Portland, but the narrative had already splintered. To conspiracy theorists, secrecy equaled guilt. Adding to the fog, Royal watchers noted that Meghan and Harry insisted on total privacy in the lead-up to and aftermath of Archie's birth. While protecting one's child from the media is a valid desire, the choice to withhold basic details traditionally shared with the public seemed to exacerbate suspicions. Some accused them of cultivating drama and mystery to increase public curiosity, while others argued they were hiding something more serious. It didn't help that during their post-royal interviews, especially the infamous 2021 sit-down with Oprah Winfrey, neither Harry nor Meghan addressed the rumors directly. While they tackled racism, family estrangement, and emotional distress, the surrogacy allegations remained untouched. For some, this omission was telling. For others, it was the responsible decision to not give credibility to baseless conspiracy theories. Regardless of interpretation, the silence left a vacuum that continued to attract noise. Throughout 2019 and into 2020, media coverage remained mixed. Mainstream outlets like BBC, The Guardian, and The New York Times ignored the surrogate theory entirely, viewing it as fringe gossip unworthy of validation. But alternative media platforms, YouTube channels, and international tabloids like Australia's New Idea or The Globe in the US occasionally flirted with the narrative. These outlets were careful not to assert claims as fact, but their choice to report on the buzz gave the theory an afterlife in the public arena. By the time Meghan announced her second pregnancy in 2021, this time with daughter Lilibet Diana, the scrutiny returned. Photographs from the maternity shoot, Meghan in a white dress lying in Harry's lap under a tree, were dissected online. While some hailed the images as intimate and beautiful, critics asked again, where were the public appearances? Why did her baby bump only appear in photo shoots, not in-person events? Another controversy erupted when the couple announced Lilibet's birth occurred in California at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. Yet, in multiple interviews afterward, neither Meghan nor Harry discussed the birth process in detail. There was no photographic proof of Meghan entering or leaving the hospital. No staff testimony. No corroborating documentation that made it to the public. Once again, this reinforced the belief among skeptics that something was being hidden. In 2022, things escalated when a series of YouTube creators, including several with hundreds of thousands of followers, published breakdowns comparing Meghan's body language, bump movement, and timeline inconsistencies. Some claimed to have insider sources, including nurses and former royal aides, who allegedly hinted at off-the-record truths. Though unverified and mostly anecdotal, the claims spread like wildfire, particularly in comment sections and Twitter threads. One video, titled "The Truth About Meghan's Baby Bump," garnered over 3 million views within a month. It showed slowed-down clips, side-by-side photos of real pregnancies versus Meghan's silhouette, and guest appearances by alleged body language experts. Whether or not the content had merit, its popularity demonstrated just how deep the rabbit hole had grown. To those defending Meghan, the theory was nothing more than misogyny dressed in suspicion. They argued that attacking a woman's pregnancy is a cruel and deeply personal form of defamation, particularly for someone like Meghan, who had spoken openly about suffering a miscarriage in 2020. To them, accusing a woman who had experienced real loss of faking motherhood was not just offensive, it was an act of public violence. Still, the belief refused to die. It simmered quietly, boiling up only during moments of public attention, like Harry and Meghan's Netflix documentary or the publication of Harry's memoir, Spare. In those releases, personal details were shared, but never the kind that could confirm or disprove the theories. That's what made the South Park depiction so explosive. The moment the prosthetic baby bump hit the animated studio floor, it was as if every buried theory, every thread from Reddit, and every YouTube speculation had suddenly been validated. Not factually, but culturally. The theory had jumped from niche internet conversation into the mainstream satire space, where it could no longer be ignored. By dramatizing the idea, South Park gave it visual form. It took the abstract and made it literal. And in doing so, it reopened a cultural wound that had never fully healed. It forced the public to revisit a rumor that had never been conclusively addressed and ask the uncomfortable question, why has this theory persisted for so long? Was it the secrecy of the Sussexes? The defiance of royal tradition? The frustration of a public that once celebrated Meghan, only to feel alienated by her rejection of royal customs? Or was it something deeper, an unease with fame narratives that feel too curated, too protected, and too perfect? Regardless of where one stands, the damage from such rumors is undeniable. Whether true or not, allegations of fake pregnancy strike at the very core of a woman's identity. They question her body, her choices, her honesty. They reduce her motherhood to a conspiracy, her children to rumors. And when repeated long enough, even in jest, they can scar public perception permanently. What began in digital shadows has now been projected into the satirical spotlight. The result? Meghan Markle once again finds herself not just a subject of criticism, but of doubt. Doubt about her truth, her narrative, and her most sacred experiences. And for the first time, that doubt isn't just on fringe forums or gossip channels. It's in your living room, on your TV screen, and embedded into the cultural zeitgeist. South Park may not have created the rumor, but they legitimized its place in the global conversation. And Meghan? She may never be able to fully step out from under its shadow. Timing is everything in comedy, but in satire, timing is power. South Park has built its reputation on releasing cultural commentary that doesn't just poke fun. It strikes at the exact moment society is ready to laugh at the thing it once tiptoed around. And when it came to Meghan Markle, the decision to parody her, especially in such a brutal and specific way, wasn't random. It was a calculated move that reflects a shift in how the public, and by extension, the entertainment industry, now sees her. For a long time, Meghan Markle was untouchable. When she first entered the royal scene, media outlets worldwide celebrated her as the breath of fresh air the monarchy desperately needed. She was glamorous, articulate, biracial, American, and independent, a modern woman entering a centuries-old institution. Her 2018 wedding to Prince Harry was watched by nearly 2 billion people. She was embraced as a symbol of progress and inclusivity in a family often criticized for its outdated traditions and lack of diversity. But admiration has a shelf life, especially when fame intersects with controversy. So what changed? South Park doesn't attack public figures who are adored. It waits until public opinion fractures. And with Meghan, that fracture was gradual, subtle, and ultimately irreversible. At first, the cracks appeared as whispers, questions about the tone of her interviews, contradictions in her storytelling, and her relationship with the press. Then came the lawsuits against British tabloids, the very public Oprah interview in 2021, and later, the Netflix documentary that further exposed rifts within the royal family. Each media appearance was framed as truth-telling. But as the revelations piled up, they started sounding rehearsed, even performative. Some viewers began to feel like they were watching a production, not a confession. Meghan wasn't just telling her story, she was curating it. Every detail was delivered with precision. The lighting was perfect. The tears fell on cue. And yet, for all the exposure, the core mystery remained. Who was the real Meghan Markle? This question became the turning point in how the public related to her. Supporters saw her as a survivor, a woman who had endured institutional racism, media harassment, and emotional trauma. Critics saw something else entirely, a manipulator, a woman who wielded victimhood like a branding tool, someone who sought fame under the banner of privacy. That tension, the gap between public persona and perceived reality, is exactly the kind of contradiction South Park thrives on. Their writers pay close attention to who dominates headlines, not just once, but consistently, and for reasons beyond their profession. Meghan had become one of those figures. Her name trended on Twitter almost weekly. Her every move, every public appearance, legal filing, or podcast episode was analyzed with the same intensity as a political scandal. She was no longer just a duchess or an actress. She had become a narrative, and narratives are what South Park dissects best. Unlike traditional comedy shows, South Park doesn't need weeks of production time. Its creators, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, pride themselves on the show's rapid turnaround, often writing, animating, and voicing an episode in just 6 days. This gives them the ability to respond to current events while they're still fresh. But that speed is only used when they believe the audience is already primed to receive the message. In Meghan's case, the ground had been prepared. Her public statements about privacy, particularly following the Oprah interview and the Netflix documentary, had already invited widespread ridicule. She repeatedly emphasized the need for space, respect, and personal boundaries, yet continued to release personal content, memoirs, and documentaries on her own terms. To some, this was a contradiction, to others, hypocrisy. The phrase, "we just want to tell our story," became synonymous with overexposure. And South Park seized on that cultural fatigue, transforming it into the central premise of their episode, a royal couple who beg for privacy while appearing on every platform possible, holding press conferences, releasing memoirs. in storming talk show stages. It's not just that Meghan was mocked. It's that the culture had arrived at a point where mocking her was acceptable. This shift didn't happen in a vacuum. The media's treatment of the Sussexes changed dramatically after their U.S. relocation. Early interviews and coverage were sympathetic, painting the couple as refugees from a cruel and outdated monarchy. But over time, sympathy gave way to skepticism. People began noticing patterns: the selective release of information, the vague accusations, the refusal to name names. And perhaps most damaging of all, the perceived monetization of trauma. South Park tapped into this growing discomfort. By the time the episode aired, there had been months of headlines that played into the exact themes the show exaggerated. Meghan's podcast, Archetypes, had struggled to maintain listener interest after the initial burst of hype. Spotify ultimately canceled the deal, with behind-the-scenes sources citing creative differences and missed content deadlines. Then came the fallout from Harry's memoir, Spare, which painted his family in unflattering light but also revealed petty grievances, drug use, and deeply personal moments that some readers felt should have remained private. It all painted a picture of a couple desperate to control the narrative and to profit from it. To Parker and Stone, this was comedic gold. But it wasn't just the contradictions that made Meghan a target. It was the cultural saturation. Every platform seemed to feature her. Every outlet had something to say. Meghan had become omnipresent, and with omnipresence comes parody. South Park's writers didn't invent the fatigue, they merely gave it a voice. And in doing so, validated what many viewers were already thinking but didn't feel permitted to say. That validation is crucial. Satire is often misunderstood as simply making fun of people. But in truth, it serves a deeper function. It signals a shift in what society is willing to accept, challenge, or reject. When South Park parodied Scientology in the now iconic Trapped in the Closet episode, it wasn't just making jokes, it was signaling that the public was ready to question the institution. When they mocked Mel Gibson's rants or Tom Cruise's behavior, they weren't just laughing at celebrities, they were revealing the tension between fame and public trust. So too with Meghan Markle. The episode didn't attack her for being royal. It didn't critique her humanitarian work or racial identity. It mocked the persona. The carefully managed image that, to many, had become too polished, too rehearsed, and too eager for validation. To some viewers, the satire felt like catharsis. It broke the spell of uncritical admiration. It allowed people to laugh at the absurdity they'd been sensing for years. To others, it was cruel, sexist, and racist, a targeted attack on a woman who had dared to step outside her royal lane and challenge tradition. But here's the truth South Park understands better than most. Satire never pleases everyone. Its job isn't to comfort, it's to confront. And by choosing Meghan as their target, South Park wasn't punching down. They were punching at power, the power of media manipulation, the power of celebrity, the power of curated victimhood. In their view, Meghan represented not just a person, but a trend, the blurring of lines between authenticity and branding, between trauma and marketing, between privacy and publicity. And timing it with such precision wasn't just a programming decision, it was a statement. It told viewers that the age of unchecked sympathy might be over. That public figures, no matter how victimized they claim to be, are fair game when their actions contradict their words. And that no narrative, no matter how carefully curated, is immune to satire. South Park struck because they sensed a cultural moment, and as history has shown, their instincts are rarely wrong. This was the time. Meghan's media halo had dimmed. The mystique had faded. The contradictions had mounted. And the audience was ready, not for another royal confession, but for a laugh. Even if that laugh came at someone else's expense. The morning after the South Park episode aired, speculation began to swirl, not just online, but within certain press circles and royal insider communities, about a series of strange movements surrounding Meghan Markle. Her name was already trending globally due to the episode, but new layers of mystery began to unfold. What initially looked like a media backlash quickly took on a more dramatic tone. Eyewitness accounts, grainy footage, and unverified yet compelling reports painted a picture of a woman not just hiding from the fallout, but possibly fleeing from it. Reports first emerged from a private hangar in Santa Barbara, near the Sussex's Montecito mansion. Around 3:45 a.m., according to anonymous tips from aviation staff and security personnel, a sleek, dark-tinted vehicle arrived at the airport gates. Moments later, Meghan Markle was allegedly seen stepping out of the SUV, flanked by two suited men wearing earpieces, clearly private security. She wore a long black coat, her face partially concealed by a cap and oversized sunglasses, and she walked briskly with her head down. No official press followed. No goodbye to the cameras. No statement to the public. Just silence. Within the hour, a Gulfstream G650 jet, belonging to an unnamed Middle Eastern businessman, took off from the private airstrip, reportedly bound for Dubai International Airport. The flight plan was sealed under diplomatic arrangements, a method often used for VIP travelers who require discretion and privacy. And just like that, Meghan Markle was gone. To the public, her location remained unknown. Her team gave no explanation. But those monitoring international movements of high-profile figures began piecing together what appeared to be a strategic retreat to the United Arab Emirates, an escape not from physical danger, but from an implosion of media credibility. Dubai may seem like an odd choice to some, but for those familiar with the world of crisis management and celebrity damage control, it makes perfect sense. The United Arab Emirates, particularly Dubai, has long served as a sanctuary for global elites who find themselves in need of a reset. The city offers world-class luxury accommodations, top-tier security, and strict privacy laws that limit press interference. Paparazzi are effectively barred from operating without permission. International media, especially Western outlets, are often forced to comply with stringent regulations when reporting on public figures inside the UAE. For Meghan, this environment would be ideal. It's a place where she can disappear from the public eye without the constant threat of camera lenses or media leaks. It's a space where she can regroup, consult legal and PR advisors, and prepare her next move in peace. And it's far enough from the US and UK media cycles to avoid the daily bombardment of headlines, memes, and commentary flooding every digital platform. Sources close to royal watchers claim this trip wasn't spontaneous. In fact, whispers suggest Meghan had been exploring options for overseas privacy long before the South Park episode aired. According to one insider, there had been quiet conversations with property managers in Dubai's Emirates Hills, often called the Beverly Hills of the Middle East, as early as mid-January. At least 2 villas had reportedly been visited by representatives believed to be linked to the Duchess's team. The timing is crucial. If Meghan was already considering a Middle Eastern retreat prior to the cartoon controversy, then the South Park episode may have simply accelerated an existing plan. If not, then the speed of her departure reflects panic. Either way, the optics are jarring. A public figure known for championing transparency and media presence now vanishing in the dead of night. Critics were quick to pounce. Online commentators labeled it a flight from accountability. Pundits accused her of running away from questions she doesn't want to answer, from rumors she refuses to address. She demanded the microphone when it suited her, one viral tweet read, but now she can't take the feedback? Others framed her escape in more strategic terms. One PR executive interviewed anonymously by a digital media outlet explained, if Meghan's team is smart, and they often are, this isn't just hiding. It's recalibration. She'll stay off the radar long enough for the online storm to burn out, then return with a carefully crafted message, probably framed around victimhood and misogyny. And it'll work, at least with her core base. But the real intrigue lies in what happens next. Dubai is not just a vacation destination. It's a global hub for soft diplomacy, business alliances, and reputation management. There's a quiet industry there, operating under the radar, built on protecting the images of controversial billionaires, celebrities, and royals. The city's elite PR firms specialize in white-glove image makeovers. For the right price, a reputation bruised in the West can be remade behind the safety of UAE borders. Several such firms are already rumored to have been contacted. Confidential sources inside Emirates Towers, a complex housing many private consultancy firms, revealed that 2 crisis management experts from London and Los Angeles had flown in the same day Meghan allegedly landed. Their names weren't publicized, but both are known in the field for handling high-stakes celebrity scandals, including leaks, lawsuits, and public backlash. This suggests that Meghan's disappearance wasn't merely emotional, it was tactical. The narrative of privacy could once again be deployed, only this time, more convincingly. After all, how much more private can one get than Dubai? Yet, it also poses new questions. Is Meghan abandoning her brand by hiding? Is she conceding defeat to satire? Or is she preparing for a dramatic comeback? Past patterns provide some insight. Following every major backlash, be it from her Oprah interview, her Spotify podcast criticisms, or the royal family tensions, Meghan has typically emerged with a reframe, a new project, a new cause, a new version of her story. Could this disappearance be the prelude to the next chapter? Supporters argue that she is within her rights to escape what they describe as bullying and misogyny. They claim South Park crossed ethical boundaries, and that Meghan, a mother of two, is simply doing what any woman would do, protecting her mental health and retreating until the world grows tired of mocking her. But skeptics see something different. To them, this is yet another example of manipulation. A disappearing act meant to buy time, build sympathy, and control a narrative that has spiraled far beyond her influence. And with Harry still in California, spotted running errands, allegedly seen entering a mental health clinic for high-profile clients, it only deepens the impression of separation, distance, and emotional fracture within their so-called united front. Adding more complexity to the Dubai theory is the silence from official sources. The British royal family has declined to comment. The Sussex team has issued no press release, and Meghan's known spokespersons have gone off-grid. Even Archewell, the non-profit organization founded by Meghan and Harry, has gone dark, its social channels dormant, its email list quiet. This is not how the Sussexes typically operate. In the past, Meghan has been quick to address attacks she deems unfair, especially if they involve her motherhood, character, or intentions. The silence in this case is deafening, not only because it's unusual, but because it implies either the weight of what has happened or the fear that speaking out will only deepen the public backlash. So what does Meghan's alleged flight to Dubai really mean? Is it a calculated retreat? A moment of emotional breakdown? Or both? And perhaps more importantly, how long can she stay gone? Dubai offers security, yes, but it doesn't offer invisibility forever. At some point, she will have to return, whether to respond, defend, or rebrand. And when she does, the world will remember not just the cartoon that mocked her, but the flight that followed, the vanishing act, the unanswered questions. It's not just that she left, it's what she left behind, a cultural storm, a firestorm of debate, and a growing divide in public opinion. In the world of celebrity, visibility is currency. Disappearing may feel like safety in the short term, but absence also creates a vacuum. And in a media landscape as hungry and fast-moving as ours, that vacuum rarely stays empty for long. New stories rise. New controversies erupt. Audiences move on. If Meghan hopes to reclaim her narrative, she'll have to return. But when she does, the rules may have changed. Her every word, every appearance, every project will now be viewed through the lens of that cartoon scene. The belly on the floor, the laughter of the crowd, the silence that followed, and the jet that vanished into the Dubai sky. In the hours and days that followed the now infamous South Park episode, the reaction from the global public was instantaneous and polarizing. The internet didn't simply light up. It combusted. From TikTok to Reddit, YouTube to cable news, every corner of digital and traditional media began dissecting what had happened, what it meant, and most revealingly, how people felt about it. The world wasn't just watching Meghan Markle's fictionalized humiliation. They were actively participating in it. And the reactions fell into two sharply divided camps. On one side was the wave of laughter. For these viewers, the South Park episode wasn't just funny, it was therapeutic. Finally, they said, someone had called out what so many had felt for years. That Meghan Markle had used the guise of victimhood to build a brand. That she had performed vulnerability not to heal but to harvest sympathy. That her endless interviews, documentaries, and media appearances had less to do with reclaiming her voice and more to do with amplifying her control over a carefully curated public image. The prosthetic belly scene, in particular, became a lightning rod. It was brutal, yes, but for many, it symbolized years of pent-up frustration with a woman who seemed to operate by a different set of rules. While others were criticized, called out, or canceled for smaller inconsistencies, Meghan had largely remained protected by a narrative of suffering and racism. The cartoon shattered that shield in the most dramatic way possible, and for a subset of the public, it was long overdue. On Twitter, hashtags like #FakeBump and #SouthParkTruth began trending within hours. Memes flooded timelines. One showing Meghan chasing after a rolling silicone bump down the street. Another captioned, "When your script slips mid-interview." The tone wasn't just mocking, it was gleeful. For these users, the parody was more than entertainment. It was justice. One widely shared tweet read, "South Park just did in 22 minutes what royal correspondents have been trying to do for 5 years. cut through the noise and show us the real Meghan. Another simply said, not all heroes wear capes. Some animate satire. YouTube creators capitalized quickly. Reaction videos, episode breakdowns, and commentary essays filled up video feeds. Channels that had long questioned the Sussexes' motives now had new content to dissect, frame by frame. One commentator called the episode a cultural exorcism, claiming it allowed people to finally laugh at something they had been pressured to take seriously. But while the mockery gained traction, there was another side of the reaction equally passionate. Those who were outraged. For Meghan's defenders, South Park had crossed a line. Satire, they argued, was one thing. Humiliation was another. Many felt the depiction wasn't just cruel, it was gendered and dehumanizing. The belly gag, in particular, struck a deeply personal nerve. Accusing a woman of faking a pregnancy, especially one who had publicly spoken about miscarriage, is not only inaccurate, they said, but psychologically violent. Supporters took to social media to express their disgust. Some tweeted, "Misogyny disguised as humor is still misogyny." Others pointed out how Meghan's image has been distorted and weaponized by both traditional media and online forums, and that the cartoon only added fuel to a fire of harassment and disinformation. Several women's rights organizations quietly condemned the episode, even if not publicly. One source close to a UK-based advocacy group reported they had received an influx of messages from members upset by the portrayal. Internally, the group debated releasing a statement, but ultimately decided against it, worried that drawing more attention to the episode would do more harm than good. Celebrity voices began to weigh in as well. Actress and activist Jameela Jamil posted a cryptic message that read, "A society that laughs at women's pain and finds glee in their collapse is a society in decay." She didn't mention Meghan by name, but the implication was clear. Others echoed her sentiment. A former co-star of Meghan's on Suits posted a message that read, "People forget these are real humans. It's easy to laugh at cartoons until the damage is permanent." Still, even within progressive circles, the reaction was complicated. Some who sympathized with Meghan in the past admitted that the South Park episode struck a nerve not because it was entirely false, but because it forced them to confront the contradictions in her public persona. One op-ed in a major online magazine asked, "Can we defend Meghan's right to tell her story while also acknowledging that she has told it so many times? It now feels like a performance?" That was the tension at the heart of the public reaction. Satire had blurred the line between mockery and revelation. People weren't just reacting to the cartoon. They were reacting to everything that had led up to it. Every carefully worded interview, every polished photo shoot, every omission, every contradiction, every moment that felt just a bit too produced. For some, South Park had exaggerated. For others, it had merely said aloud what many were already thinking. The demographic breakdown of the reaction was also telling. In online surveys conducted by informal polling groups and YouTube creators, older viewers, particularly those familiar with the royal family's traditions, were more likely to laugh at the episode and dismiss Meghan's criticisms of the institution. Younger viewers were more split. Gen Z users, especially women of color, expressed discomfort with the cartoon's attack on motherhood and saw it as part of a larger pattern of targeting outspoken women. Across platforms, sentiment trackers showed spikes in anti-Meghan content, but also a parallel spike in sympathy-driven posts. Some users reframed her alleged disappearance to Dubai as an act of survival, not cowardice. "She's doing what any of us would do," one Instagram user posted. "When the world laughs at your trauma, you protect your peace." Others weren't so forgiving. A user on Reddit's r/out-off-loop thread wrote, "The real issue isn't that South Park is mean. It's that we're exhausted. How many times can Meghan cry wolf before we start asking if the wolf is real?" What became evident through all of this was the scale of emotional investment. Meghan Markle wasn't just a celebrity. She had become a symbol of class conflict, racial tension, media manipulation, and generational change. Everyone saw in her what they wanted to see. To some, she was the unfairly treated outsider. To others, she was the master manipulator exploiting a system she claimed to despise. And the South Park episode acted like a cultural Rorschach test. It showed us not just how people felt about Meghan, but how people feel about authenticity, victimhood, and fame in the age of social media. Are we more inclined to trust those who share their pain? Or do we grow suspicious when that pain becomes content? Do we still believe in privacy, or have we accepted that celebrity comes with constant visibility and accountability? Perhaps the most revealing reaction came not from a royal commentator or social media user, but from a mental health expert interviewed on a morning show panel 2 days after the episode aired. She said, "Whether you believe Meghan faked a pregnancy or not is beside the point. What matters is that a narrative now exists in which that seems plausible to people. That's a sign that the trust between public figures and the public is broken. Once trust breaks, satire doesn't just make fun, it replaces truth." It was a chilling assessment, and it rang true. Because for many viewers, the cartoon wasn't merely funny. It was persuasive. It launched itself into the psyche in a way few memes or headlines ever do. It simplified the scandal. It caricatured the contradictions. And in doing so, it solidified a version of Meghan Markle that may now be impossible to erase. A version not defined by her words or achievements, but by a thud on a studio floor and the laughter that followed. Public reaction didn't just mirror the episode, it amplified it. The jokes became headlines. The memes became narratives. And Meghan, for better or worse, was no longer in control of her own story. While the world reeled, laughed, argued, and speculated in the wake of the South Park episode, one person remained conspicuously absent from the conversation: Prince Harry. No public statement. No angry retweet. No behind-the-scenes source revealing his outrage or defense. Just silence, a silence that, in some ways, said more than any prepared press release ever could. For a man who has made it a mission to speak out about nearly everything, his grief over Princess Diana, his strained relationship with his father, his disdain for the tabloid press, his traumas, his healing, his therapy journey, the absence of a response this time struck many as unnatural, even eerie. This wasn't just any controversy. It was a direct, pointed attack on his wife, his children, and by extension, the integrity of his family. And yet, from Harry, nothing. Observers couldn't help but ask, was Harry choosing not to speak? Or was he unable to? To understand Harry's silence, one must first consider the unique position he now finds himself in. Stripped of his royal duties and privileges but still carrying the weight of his title and lineage, he exists in a kind of suspended identity, neither fully royal nor fully free. In the United Kingdom, his name still carries historic gravitas. In America, it carries a mix of celebrity shine and cautious skepticism. But in both places, his words matter. They carry implications. They create ripples. And perhaps now, they create damage. If Harry were to come out swinging in defense of Meghan, it could deepen the controversy. It could keep the parody in headlines longer, reinforce the theory that it struck a nerve, and reignite debates the couple likely want to fade. On the other hand, remaining silent allows speculation to flourish. Does he agree with the depiction? Is he embarrassed? Is he angry at Meghan? Or worse, does he believe it's not worth defending anymore? Those closest to the couple claim Harry was blindsided by the episode. A former friend of the prince, now distant but still loosely connected to royal circles, told a British tabloid on Background that Harry didn't see it coming and didn't know how to respond. The source claimed that while Meghan was furious and humiliated, Harry was quietly devastated. Not just because his wife had been mocked, but because the cartoon had captured a public mood he could no longer deny. In other words, it wasn't just satire. It was exposure. And for Harry, a man who has spent his adult life trying to shield the people he loves from the same public judgment that destroyed his mother, it may have felt like failure. But others read his silence differently. Not as sadness, but as distance. Some insiders claim tensions between Harry and Meghan have increased in the wake of recent public stumbles. From the Spotify deal collapse to the lukewarm reception of Harry's memoir Spare, pressure on their partnership has only grown. And though they still present a united front in photographs and occasional media snippets, there are rumors swirling behind the scenes about creative differences, diverging goals, even arguments over their shared public image. Did Harry feel this latest scandal was one bridge too far? There are precedents to consider. In the past, Harry has quickly and fiercely defended Meghan in public. In 2016, during the early days of their relationship, he released a rare and powerful statement through Kensington Palace condemning racist and sexist treatment of her by the press. It was bold, unprecedented. At the time, it earned him praise for standing up against injustice and protecting the woman he loved. Then again, that was when Meghan was a girlfriend being attacked from the outside, not a wife accused of manipulating the media from within. The stakes then were personal. Now, they're global. Harry's memoir may offer a clue into his current mindset. In Spare, he painted a picture of a man wrestling with dual allegiances, his duty to truth and his loyalty to his family. He was honest, at times raw, but also selective. His voice, while vulnerable, was calculated, carefully edited, polished for maximum impact. He revealed pain, but rarely revealed contradictions. And yet, the South Park episode exposed precisely what he avoided: the dissonance between what he says and what he does. Between the cries for privacy and the pursuit of publicity. Between his disdain for media manipulation and his own deployment of it through Netflix, Oprah, and publishing deals. In this light, Harry's silence might not be about Meghan at all. It might be about himself. Maybe he's realizing that the brand they built, the Sussex identity of rebellion, independence, and transparency, is buckling under its own weight. Maybe he's finally seeing what his critics have said for years, that swapping royal duties for Hollywood deals doesn't free you from scrutiny, it invites a different kind. If that's true, then Harry's silence is not cowardice. It's resignation. Still, the silence has consequences. Without Harry speaking up, Meghan is left exposed. Without a public show of support, their partnership appears weakened. The strength of their bond, once the very engine behind their global appeal, is now being questioned. Commentators across media outlets have begun wondering if Harry is emotionally withdrawing, perhaps out of frustration or self-preservation. Others argue he's simply overwhelmed, that he didn't anticipate this level of backlash and doesn't know how to shield his wife from a cultural wave too strong to fight. Notably, there were unconfirmed reports of Harry being seen at a discreet wellness center in California shortly after the episode aired. The facility, known for housing celebrities and high-net-worth individuals in crisis, declined to confirm or deny. But tabloid photos suggested he looked somber, distant, and disheveled. A man weighed down, if not by guilt, then by helplessness. It's a far cry from the man who once called the press vultures and swore to protect his family at all costs. One theory gaining traction online is that Harry is stuck in a dilemma. If he defends Meghan, he risks further mockery. If he stays silent, he risks looking disloyal. It's a no-win situation, especially in a world where every word can be twisted and every motive questioned. But another, darker theory looms, that perhaps Harry is finally seeing what others have long suspected. That his marriage, while rooted in love, is entangled with ambition. That his wife's desire for global recognition, for influence, for power through storytelling, may now be costing him something he can't afford to lose: his dignity. That's the part the cartoon couldn't animate. The quiet, internal unraveling of a man whose life has been defined by loss, only to now face the threat of losing control over the one thing he thought he could own: his truth. In the days after the episode, silence wasn't the only sound surrounding Harry. There was also speculation. Op-eds emerged wondering what his long-term strategy was. Some suggested he was being advised to lay low, that any statement would fan the flames. Others said he was buying time to gauge public sentiment, to prepare a counter-narrative, or to quietly distance himself from the fallout. Still others wondered if the silence was a test of the public, of the press, of Meghan herself. If Harry remains quiet much longer, the question shifts. It's no longer, why hasn't he spoken? It becomes, does he have anything left to say? For now, the answer is buried under headlines, opinion pieces, and speculation. And in a way, that's the most painful irony of all. A man who fled his royal life to escape being silenced now finds that his silence says more than his words ever could. Whether it's shame, strategy, or sorrow, Prince Harry is watching a media hurricane form around his wife. And this time, he's not standing in front of her. He's standing somewhere far behind, in the quiet. And the world is noticing. There is an unwritten understanding in democratic societies: satire is protected speech. It's a cornerstone of free expression, a tool used by artists, comedians, and journalists to criticize, question, and expose the absurdities of power, privilege, and public figures. But when satire begins to blur with defamation, when it ceases to punch up and instead becomes personal, intimate, and potentially damaging, the boundaries become less clear and more contested. That's exactly the gray area that Meghan Markle's brutal portrayal in South Park has pushed us into. The image of her cartoon character's prosthetic pregnancy bump falling off wasn't just a gag. It was a direct jab at one of the most sensitive and deeply personal rumors that have surrounded her since her first pregnancy, allegations of surrogacy and faked motherhood. While many dismissed the scene as outrageous and exaggerated comedy, others saw something different, a veiled accusation, packaged as parody. And that opens up a legal and ethical debate, one that Meghan Markle and her legal team have reportedly been weighing behind the scenes. Can satire cross the line into defamation? And if it does it still deserve protection? The short legal answer is this. In the United States, satire is generally protected under the First Amendment, even if it's hurtful or distasteful. The U.S. Supreme Court has long upheld the principle that public figures are subject to a higher threshold when it comes to proving defamation. Simply being offended, embarrassed, or humiliated is not enough. A public figure must prove actual malice, that the false statements were made with knowledge of their falsehood or with reckless disregard for the truth. And South Park, by design, is a work of fiction. Every episode opens with a disclaimer stating that the show is completely fictional, and any similarities to real people are purely coincidental, an obvious wink at the fact that they base entire plots on real people. But those disclaimers carry weight in courtrooms. They reinforce the idea that the show is intended as absurdist parody, not a factual documentary. That legal shield is strong, and it's been tested before. South Park has been sued multiple times by religious groups, celebrities, and advocacy organizations, yet none of those cases have prevailed. Their episode mocking Scientology led to significant internal chaos within the church but never reached a successful legal judgment. Their depictions of Tom Cruise, Kanye West, and Mel Gibson drew widespread outrage but stayed firmly within legal protection. The show's creators, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, have built their empire on the foundation of nothing is sacred, and the law has repeatedly backed their right to say so. So from a legal standpoint, Meghan Markle faces a steep uphill battle if she were to sue. But that hasn't stopped speculation that her legal team may be considering options. According to reports from royal commentators and U.S. media insiders, Meghan's advisors are evaluating whether the episode caused reputational harm that goes beyond comedy. The argument being explored isn't that South Park spread lies, but that they used satire to revive a damaging and debunked conspiracy theory, one that had previously been confined to gossip columns and fringe internet spaces. If that theory is reintroduced into mainstream conversation because of a fictional cartoon, does the satire still hold? Or does it become an enabler of defamation, hiding behind its comedic cloak? That's where things get complicated. In defamation law, intent matters. South Park's writers would likely argue their intent was comedic, not factual. That the pregnancy gag was meant to ridicule the absurdity of public speculation, not to imply Meghan truly faked her pregnancies. But if viewers interpret the gag as confirmation rather than parody, does that unintended perception shift the responsibility? Not legally, but perhaps ethically.